Hola a todos, yo soy Samuel. Para los que no me conocen, estoy aprendiendo español. And today we're going to talk about expectations. Alright, so you've decided to start learning Spanish. That's exciting. I'm excited for you. You should be excited. Stay excited. Excitement will, honestly, it'll only take you so far, so find some discipline in there. But excitement, that's like the first step. This is great. I started my Spanish learning journey probably about 5 years ago. It's hard to say exactly when that day was. I've learned a lot. I've had to unlearn some things. I've had to relearn some things. And I'd like to share with you guys today 5 things that I wish I knew before I started learning Spanish. Alright, so number 1, what I wish I knew before I started learning Spanish, it's going to take longer than you want it to. Probably a lot longer. You know, if you've poked around on the internet, you've probably seen empty promises like, learn Spanish in 6 months, be fluent in 3 months, sound like a native in 30 days, learn Spanish while you sleep. And it's not that easy. It's just not. I understand people are coming to Spanish, you know, with varying degrees of knowledge already. Some people have been surrounded by it their whole life and they want to perfect it. Some people are starting at a true zero. And if I say hola, you're already confused. Wherever you're at, it's great. We're glad to have you on board. But whatever time frame you have in your mind, just go ahead and like triple it right now. And if you're still excited, which you should be because it is a rewarding journey, just decide now that you're going to make a habit that every single day you're going to devote 20 minutes to learning Spanish or 30 minutes to learning Spanish. The time is going to pass anyway. You might as well learn something cool. And at least in my opinion, Spanish is pretty cool. All right, number 2, second thing, it makes sense when I say it out loud. For some reason, I did it the hard way. But focus on high frequency words and phrases first. Before you get really specific. So learn the word for fish. Love the word for fish. Use the word for fish. Don't spend unnecessary time in your first month of learning Spanish trying to memorize how to properly identify all the sea creatures in Finding Nemo. Don't do that. Learn the word for fish and move on. All right, and the third thing that I wish I knew when I started learning Spanish is that the sentence structure is going to be different. It's just easier if you accept that and don't try to fight it. You know, in English we might say, my name is Sam. Whereas in Spanish, if you translate it word for word, it's more like, myself I call Sam. O de verdad, cuando estoy hablando en español, prefiero llamarme Samuel, pero you guys get it. So it's hard to kind of think of it that way as like, I call myself Sam. Myself, I call Sam. Right? Or another example would be like in English, you could be scared. That is a state of being that you are scared. Whereas in Spanish, it's more natural to describe it as like having fear. And yeah, I don't really have a remedy for this one, guys, honestly. It's just kind of accept it. So yeah, when you're learning sentence structure, ask less questions, smile, nod, and recite a little bit more. It's just going to be easier long run. Okay, number 4. If you want to speak Spanish, you're going to have to speak Spanish. What that means. I have met a ton of people who have told me they're learning Spanish or they have been learning Spanish for whatever, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever the case be, but they don't ever speak Spanish and they're shocked that they can't. There's complex in people's minds that you think like, oh, I'm going to study for a long time, and then the first time I open my mouth to a stranger in Spanish, it's going to be perfect. If that's where your head is at, you're going to be really disappointed, because that's not how it works. You can't just internalize everything and expect to be able to speak it fluently, right? Like reading, writing, and understanding spoken Spanish is one game. It's like a totally different league when it comes to actually speaking it. So if I could talk to myself 5 years ago, I would say something like, "Hey Sam, it's Sam from the future. You know how you just watched like 30 minutes of content in slowed down Spanish? Go talk about it with somebody, but do it in Spanish. You're going to sound like an idiot. You're going to be super embarrassed. You'll probably lose some sleep tonight. It's totally worth it. You're going to learn Spanish way faster than I did." All right. And the 5th thing that I wish I knew before I started learning Spanish, and honestly probably the biggest one, is that fluency does not mean that you can articulate every subtle nuance in Spanish that you can in your native language. All right, my favorite definition of fluency is when you can learn more by using a language than simply studying it, right? So if I'm going to focus on Spanish for 30 minutes, I want to be at a point where it's just more time effective and more efficient for me to speak Spanish with somebody for 30 minutes than like bury my head in a book or do little lessons on an app or spend time in a classroom with a teacher. Because like I don't know why I thought this way, but I just kind of assumed that when somebody learned Spanish, like one night they went to bed, they weren't fluent in Spanish, and then one day they woke up and they just were. You know, they could go to a restaurant and confidently order food, and then later they could go to a mechanic and talk about a gizmo or a gadget or a sprocket or a doodad, you know, under their hood and explain, oh, over 65 miles per hour, there's a knocking noise next to the radiator fan, you know, and it's just, it really isn't that way. Learning a language, it's a long, slow, sometimes boring, sometimes exciting and rewarding, but mostly numbing and dull experience where day to day, it doesn't really matter, and you have to compound probably, I don't know, I'd say like 1,000 days, 3 years, sounds about right, 3 to 4 years, where you can look back at where you were versus where you are. You will be higher on the mountain. There's always more mountain to climb. Yeah, if I knew that, that would have saved me a lot of headache and a lot of frustration after, you know, getting through 6 months of effort only to turn on the news and not understand a dang word. Just know that that's normal. All right, guys, so that's 5 things that I wish I knew before I started learning Spanish. I'm super curious to know. Let me know in the comments below. If you could go back to the day that you made the decision, like for real this time, I'm learning Spanish, if you could go back and talk to that version of yourself, what's one thing you would tell yourself, you know, one expectation to set, one rumor to crush? What would you say to prepare yourself for this journey? I'd love to hear it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe if you haven't. I post a new video every week, and we'll see you next time.